Welcome, I am Daisy, your hostess. In this video, we will explore Jewish mysticism through the book titled The Secret Wisdom of the Qabalah by JFC Fuller. Qabalah is spelled in many ways, such as we see here, Qabalah, or Qaballah, or Cabala, or Kaballa. As I've mentioned in other videos, we approach these writings as curious archaeological and anthropological explorers, leaving our prejudices behind. It is with such mindset that we might be able to spot a golden nugget that may lead us to further exploration and enlightenment. I believe that some people are pigeonholed into set ways, some out of fear and others out of contentment, and there is no right or wrong about that. I say that from the most sincere belief and from personal experience, also out of love and respect for each one of us is on our own journey. We all come from different backgrounds. We have had to deal with all kinds of trials and tribulations, which in one way or other has influenced how we see the world. I also believe that when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. We don't have to look too far to observe that in many parts of this beautiful planet, we find many diverse cultures with different versions of creation, and all seeking to discover the Creator. As we get into the first chapter, the author explains that the Kabbalah is not a holy book as are the Vedas, the Bible, and the Quran. It is not a book at all, he says. Instead, it's a secret traditional knowledge, the hidden thought of a group of people in Israel, which to the uninitiated may seem a bit jumbled, and you might agree with me on that. And according to the Jewish people, it is to be found only after much labor in many Hebrew works, such as the Torah, the Talmud, the Mishnah, the Midrashim, Zohar, and scores of other books. Yet when it comes to the mysteries of life, I find that those deeper truths are in plain sight and are revealed to those ready for that level of wisdom. And when we find them, we either chuckle at the irony of it all or simply live in silence and marvel at its splendor. For truly, there are no words to describe what it is that has been revealed to us. This book is a long read, and I've divided it into a series of 4 videos. I do hope you join me for this adventure and look forward to your comments. And with that, let's turn the page. The Secret Wisdom of the Qabalah. A Study in Jewish Mystical Thought by JFC Fuller. This book is in the public domain. A quote from the Zohar. The beings who live below say that God is on high, while the angels in heaven say that God is on earth. Preface. This small book is in no sense a treatise on the Kabbalah. Instead, it is a speculative study on one of several doctrines which it contains, and I believe the key doctrine of all others. Should this be correct, then it follows that, unless this doctrine is understood, the whole symbolism of Jewish mysticism must remain obscure, and it is this mysticism, so it seems to me, which constitutes the foundations of Jewish culture and Jewish aspirations. Granted that this is so, then it follows that the idea elaborated in this book is one of considerable importance, even if many of my interpretations are faulty, even if the whole of my readings are wrong, which is unlikely. This in itself does not necessarily invalidate the idea. For example, Columbus believed the world was round, and he set out to prove it. In doing so, he discovered a new world, which, though it did not at the time actually confirm this idea, established a stepping stone to the circumnavigation of the globe, which did confirm it in an obvious and uncontradictable way. So also in this book, I have set out to penetrate the mists of Qabalistic learning, not because I presume to be an adept in its mysteries, but because I suspect that they hide within them the idea of a new world conception, an idea which for 2,000 years has been struggling to take form. Should I be right in this belief? Then it follows that once this form consolidates, from out of it will emanate a new ideology which will exert so stupendous an influence upon our lives that it will constitute a world revolution. Nevertheless, I do not intend to touch upon this possibility in the present work, for all I will attempt is to show that the idea is valid. Therefore, my object is solely to examine and explain it in order to establish it as a fact. Signed, JFCF. Introduction. The mystical foundations of the world. Life is shrouded in a mystery. This is the fundamental fact which confronts us. We live in a cave with our backs to the light, and as Plato said, our knowledge is nothing more than the shadows which play upon its walls. What is mystery is in itself we cannot tell. All we know is that it exists, and ultimately all we know of ourselves is that we exist. If we call this mystery God, then our lives vibrate between the two poles of God is and I am. But because the first transcends the reason, as the infinite transcends the finite, the relationship between them can only be expressed in symbols. That is, in finite or rational terms. If in the place of God we write reality, nature, unknowable, or zero, it matters not one whit. The equation is just as obscure, for all we have done is to replace A by B, C, D, or E, not knowing what these letters mean. The symbol has changed, but what it symbolizes remains as inscrutable. Granted that this is so, then it follows that our intellectual lives are purely symbolical existences. All our thoughts are nothing more than symbols of a mystery, whether it embraces God, the ultimate source of all things, or reality, the tangible world in which we live. All are, in fact, equidistant from what they represent and are, consequently, of equal value from the point of view of the represented. If say that God is ineffable, God is inscrutable, or God is omnipotent, though the words differ, we are saying no more than that God is. All these word symbols are of equal value because they in no way uncover this mystery. Yet, though equidistant from the represented, these symbols are by no means equidistant from the mind of man, which is not archetypal but protean. That is to say, it is forever changing its intellectual forms. Whilst at one time one set of symbols keeps it in tune with the mystery, at another time a different set of symbols can alone do so. Consequently, though A, B, C, D, and E are all of equal value to the represented, they are by no means of equal value to the representer, ourselves. Granted that this is so, then it follows that symbols, to remain potent, must change as intellectual concepts change. For example, should we today declare that the universe is composed of minute, indivisible, and indestructible atoms of matter, we can expect no appeal from the scientific mind, because the conception of the universe has changed and the man of science is thinking in terms of electrical waves or waves of light. Nevertheless, these waves are just as much symbols as atoms are, and in themselves they explain nothing. Yet their virtue lies in that they fit better into the present order of scientific thought. That is, symbolically, they are not out of place. As long as they maintain their place, they maintain their attractive power by bringing the mind into contact with the mystery. And so long as this contact endures, an equilibrium is established between the mystery and the intelligence, and the mind is held, as it were, in a state of wonder, that is, of love or attraction. So long as this equilibrium lasts, that is, so long as faith in the potency of the symbol is overwhelming, contentedness monopolizes the life of man. But directly this faith declines, discontent intervenes, and it is in discontent that must be sought the origins of all world revolutions. Why is this so? Because the finite can only find succor in the infinite, the potent in the omnipotent, the limited in the unlimited, and mortal in the immortal, the child in the mother. cut away the greater, and the lesser is bereft of hope. It is like a ship drifting on a shoreless sea. She may be well built, well stocked, and bravely manned, yet her destiny is foreordained. Having no port to put into, sooner or later she and her crew must sink beneath the waters and be lost forever. When this doom encompasses mankind, as today seemed to encompass it, man does not so much wring his hands in despair as drown his hopelessness in physical enjoyments. Let us eat and drink, for tomorrow we die, becomes the password of the age, and the more this obsession gains sway, the less does wonder illumine his path, until the age enters its eclipse. Love becomes lust, the noble ignoble, the beautiful hideous, the generous selfish, and all is lost in a scramble of greeds. It is in this dismal darkness that Satan materializes, and Satanism becomes a cult. The symbols go on, potent and impotent, but now they are turned upside down, for fear is hope reversed. What causes this vacuum into which fear rushes? A breakdown in the equilibrium between the mysterious and the intelligible. As there is the greater mystery between God and the mind of man, so also is there the lesser mystery between mind and the body of mankind. The knowing are few, the ignorant are many. What to the one is supreme goodness, to the other may prove to be a deadly poison. As Adam, eating of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, lost Eden, so throughout the ages have the wise kept wisdom to themselves, imparting to the multitudes only just sufficient knowledge to fill them with wonder, and guarding against giving too much, lest wonder intoxicates them and turns them mad. When this wisdom has been observed, an equilibrium has been established in the social order, and when it has not been observed, chaos has always held sway. A society or a civilization seldom perishes by the sword. Nearly always it perishes through a defamation of the mysteries which held it in equilibrium. When Ham uncovered his father's nakedness, he was cursed. So also was Prometheus punished for stealing fire from heaven. Thus it happens that a people or a civilization is cursed when its rulers uncover the mysteries in the public places. When the symbols are made cheap, they are misunderstood. They cease to be symbolical and become real idols in the eyes of the multitudes. When the multitudes dance around the golden calf, then are the tables of the law cast upon the ground. All this may seem strange to us today, when everything is trumpeted abroad and sold for gold, and there is no righteousness in the land, when love and lust, sorrow, tragedy, and excitement are sold for a penny in the newspapers, and when all that is sacred and vicious is broadcasted round for much less. The exploitation of the mysteries is the order of this age. There is no secrecy except that of exaggeration and untruthfulness. Yet may it not be said, is not the progress of today due almost entirely to publicity? Yes, that is undoubted. But what profit progress if the world is to be filled with discontent? Freedom is a sublime mystery, but when this mystery is vulgarized, it becomes anarchy. Look around. Everywhere we see turmoil, strife, jealousy, fear, and greed. Satan brooding over the four corners of the world and the drums of war beating nearer and nearer. Behind this turmoil crouches the machine, the Baphomet of the age of iron. He should have been the servant of man, yet he has become his master. He should have mitigated the curse of Eden and have transformed toil and labor into leisure and contentment. Why has he failed to do so? Because the mysteries of physical science, having slipped the leash of secrecy, have, like Maenads, cursed madly about the world. Once the searchers after the mysteries of nature worked in a gloom of fear, locking away their knowledge in ciphers and cryptograms. Now they stride into their laboratories, seeking to transmute knowledge into gold, and when the people cannot understand their jargon, They fall back upon the pen of the novel writer, transforming scientific fact into romantic fiction. Why has science thus failed us? Because the wisdom of the few has been cast like pearls before the swinish ignorance of the many. The intellectual evolution of the masses has not kept pace with the physical evolution of the scientists. A new body has been built, a body of titanic power, yet it is still inhabited by a mind which belongs to a far less powerful instrument. The result is a moral disintegration, a throwing out of balance, out of focus, out of equilibrium. Chaos surrounds us because the mysteries have been communicated to those unworthy to receive them. And not until the new body is endowed with a new mind will a new soul be born within it. Such an equilibrium can alone be established through wonder, a stepping out from the finite towards the infinite, a transmutation of Satan into God. The secrecy of transcendental knowledge. Transcendental knowledge is knowledge which transcends the intelligence, yet it need not therefore be knowledge which is beyond the focus of the mind. The differential calculus is common knowledge to the mathematician, and yet it is transcendental to the majority of mankind. So also with practically all science. It is in itself the prerequisite of the few whom we call the wise. Today, the fundamental difference between the science of this age and the science of past ages is that, whilst formerly the universe was looked upon as being full of symbols which, when read correctly, could lead us to the real being which they clothed, today the universe is considered to be reality itself, a tangible being, a something which exists separated from us and which we can probe with our physical senses and take apart and put together again as if it were a machine. The mystical conception has been replaced by the mechanical conception, and yet in itself the mystery remains as profound. Christ understood this when he said, "Give not that which is holy unto the dogs, neither cast ye your pearls before swine, lest they trample them under their feet, and turn again and rend you." To the common folk, Christ spoke in parables, not because he was of a common mind, but because he was an initiate and so understood how fine is the division between reason and madness, and how easily can knowledge dissolve the filament which separates these two. This essential wisdom, and wisdom is largely the application of circumstance, has always been realized in the East. Among the Jews, and Christ was of that race, we find it firmly established, and it is not a mere coincidence that the Hebrew word sod, S-O-D, which means mystery or secrets, has the same numerical value, namely 70, as the Hebrew word which represents wine, for mystery can intoxicate as well as refresh. The mysteries of the early Hebrews were closely guarded by the sons of the doctrine, and it would appear that many of their secrets were derived from Egypt and later on from Babylonia. We are told that Moses was learned in all the wisdom of the Egyptians, and that in the first 4 books of the Pentateuch he was esoterically laid down the principles of the secret doctrine. He initiated 70 elders into the mysteries which they transmitted from mouth to ear. Generally speaking, the initiates led an ascetic life in order to separate themselves from the ignorant and unwise, so that they might guard against divulging their doctrines. In these distant days, the mysteries of nature and what is now called physical science formed part of the hidden cult. Thus Pythagoras, Anaximander, Nicetas, Heraclides, Aristarchus, Selenius, and Ecvantus believed in the rotundity of the earth or in its movements, the first of these philosophers holding that each star was a world possessing its own atmosphere and surrounded by immense spaces of ether. But this knowledge was never popularized for fear of upsetting religion, by means of which authority over the ignorant masses was maintained. Early in the 4th century A.D., we find Lactantius writing, quote, "It is an absurdity to believe that there are men who have feet above their heads, and countries in which all is inverted, in which the trees and plants grow from the top to the bottom. We find the germ of that error among the philosophers who have claimed that the earth is round." End quote. St. Augustine held a similar opinion. Long before Copernicus wrote his book Revolution of the Heavenly Bodies, about AD 1542, we find that the medieval Jews had buried this secret in the Zohar, in which may be read, quote, "In the book of Hamanuna the Old, we learn that the earth turns upon itself in the form of a circle, that some are on top and others below, that all the creatures change in aspect, following the manner of each place, keeping, however, in the same position, but there are some countries of the earth which are lightened, whilst others are in darkness. These have the day when for the former it is night, and there are countries in which it is constantly day, or in which at least the night continues only some instants. These secrets were made known to the men of the secret science, but not to the geographers." End of quote. Though refuted by Origen, Celsus was undoubtedly right when he declared that the primitive Christian church was possessed of a secret system, and Weishaupt, the supposed founder of the Illuminati, may not have been altogether wrong when he said, quote, "No one has so cleverly concealed the high meaning of his teaching, and no one finally has so surely and easily directed men onto the path of freedom as our great master, Jesus of Nazareth. This secret meaning and natural consequence of his teaching he hid completely, for Jesus had a secret doctrine, and we see in more than one place of the scriptures." End of quote. Whether this is so or not, there can be no doubt whatever that the Bible is a mystical work containing a secret doctrine which is only known to those who have initiated into it. What part of this doctrine is will be discovered later on in this book. From this brief excursion into the past, it will be seen that secrecy has played an important part in human history. The idea that all knowledge should be divulged and broadcast among the masses is something quite modern. Even as late as the 17th century, when Leibniz published in the Acta Eruditorum of Leipzig his scheme of differential calculus, he did so in such a way as to hide both the method and object from the uninitiated. Newton did the same with his invention of infinite series, and algebra, as far as it was understood by Arabians, was as a secret known to and hidden by certain Italian mathematicians for 300 years. The Jewish secret doctrines. The world is a mystery, and mysteries are dangerous to the uninitiated. Here are two facts which would seem to be uncontradictable, for divulgence has invariably led to active discontent, caused by a loss of balance between the spiritual and the mundane. Like all other peoples, the Jews realized this, and long before the Kabbalah was known as an occult science, the mysteries of creation, evolution, and dissolution were locked up in their sacred writings. Then came the Great Dispersion. A small people bereft of nationship was cast into a dissolving world, and almost simultaneously a new cult arose called Christianity, a Jewish heresy. The reaction on Orthodox Jewry was instantaneous, for a tension was established which later on led to the persecution of the Jews, whereupon the secrecy of the doctrines took on an accentuated form, for self-preservation had now to be added to the non-revelation. This led to the growth of oral traditions. The secret doctrines were passed from mouth to mouth and were locked away in the brains of the priesthood and the learned. Later, as persecution began to slacken, the written word once again began to appear, and by degrees the Kabbalah emerged into daylight. This word is a curious one. Its value is 70, which is, as we have seen, the numerical value of Sod, S-O-D. D, VS equals 4, plus 6, plus 60. And wine, of the letters, OY, equals 50 plus 10 plus 10. and also of night, which is the letters L, YL equals 30 plus 10 plus 30, and be silent, which are the letters H, S, H equals 5 plus 60 plus 5. Therefore, it may be said to mean the secret which intoxicates, which is as dark as night, and which must not be divulged. The fountainhead of this doctrine is the Zohar, or Book of Splendor, a vast jumbled commentary on the Pentateuch, written partly in Aramaic and partly in Hebrew. Tradition asserts that its author was Rabbi Simeon ben Yochai, who lived in the 2nd century AD. Of it, Ginsburg says, quote, "It was taught by God himself to a select company of angels who formed a theosophic school in paradise. After the fall, the angels most graciously communicated this heavenly doctrine to the disobedient child of earth, to furnish the protoplasts with the means of returning to their pristine nobility and felicity. From Adam it passed over to Noah, and then to Abraham, the friend of God, who emigrated with it to Egypt, where the patriarch allowed a portion of this mysterious doctrine to ooze out. It was in this way that the Egyptians obtained some knowledge of it, and the other Eastern nations could introduce it into their philosophical systems. Moses, who was learned in all the wisdom of Egypt, was first initiated into it in the land of his birth, but became most proficient in it during his wanderings in the wilderness, when he not only devoted to it the leisure hours of the whole 40 years, but received lessons in it from one of the angels. By the aid of this mysterious science, the lawgiver was enabled to solve the difficulties which arose during his management of the Israelites, in spite of the pilgrimages, wars, and frequent miseries of the nation. He covertly laid down the principles of this secret doctrine in the first 4 books of the Pentateuch, but withheld them from Deuteronomy. This constitutes the former the man, and the latter the woman. Moses also initiated the 70 elders into the secrets of this doctrine, and they again transmitted them from hand to hand. Of all who formed the unbroken line of tradition, David and Solomon were most initiated into the Qabbalah. No one, however, dared to write it down, till Simon ben Yochai, who lived at the time of the destruction of the Second Temple." End of quote. After his death, his son R. Eliezer and his secretary R. Abba, as well as his disciples, then collated R. Simon G. Yochai's treatises, and out of these composed the celebrated work called Zohar, RHZ, i.e. Splendor, which is the grand storehouse of Kabbalism. Turning from tradition to history, though here again evidence is none too secure, the Zohar is attributed to Moses de Leon, a Kabbalistic writer of the 13th century, and quite possibly parts of it were written by him. The whole compilation covers a vast ground and comprises 1. The Sefer HaZohar, the Book of Splendor, the main commentary; 2. The Sifra di Senyuta, the Book of the Veiled Mystery; 3. The Sitre Torah, Secrets of the Torah; 4. The Ra'ya Ma'ema, the True Shepherd; 5. The Midrash HaHelam, the Recondite Exposition; 6. The Tosefta, Additions; 7. The Hekaloth, Halls or Palaces; 8. The Idra Rabbah, the Greater Synod; 9. The Idra Sutta, the Lesser Synod. The first printed editions of the Zohar appeared almost simultaneously at Mantua and Cremona in 1558 or 60. Later editions are those of Lublin, 1623, Amsterdam, 1714 and 1805, Constantinople in 1736, and Venice. Of translations, Nor von Rosenroth produced his Qabbalah Denudata in 1677 and 1678, a Latin version of the Sifra di Tenuta, the Idra Rabbah and Idra Sutta, which in 1887 were translated into English by S.L. McGregor Mathers under the title of The Qabbalah Unveiled. In 1906, a complete translation of the Zohar into French was made by M. Jean de Pauli. Besides these, there is also the Sonsino edition of the Sefer HaZohar. This appeared in English between 1931 and 1934. End of introduction. Chapter 1. The Wisdom of the Qabalah. The Qabalah. The Qabbalah is not a holy book, as are the Vedas, the Bible, and the Quran. It is not a book at all. Instead, it is a secret traditional knowledge, the hidden thought of Israel, which, like gold embedded in rock, is to be found only after much labor in many Hebrew works such as the Torah, the Talmud, the Mishnah, the Midrashim, Zohar, and scores of other books, the bewildering nature of which may be recognized in a few minutes by glancing through a Talmudic miscellany by Paul Isaac Hirschon. The word HLBQ, QBLH is spelt in many ways, such as Qabalah, 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 QABALLAH, Qabbalah, CABALA, Qabbalah, Kaballa, and even though quite incorrectly, Jabella, Gabella. It is not derived from such fantastic origins as the name of Kapila, the Indian philosopher, or from the name of the goddess Cybele, for the word simply means reception. Something received, an oral transmission, an oracle, or the spoken word. And the reason is, as we already mentioned, that for ages the Qabalistic doctrines were not set down in writing or print, the Hebrews considering them too secret and sublime a wisdom for the common eye. This wisdom is formed within a vast number of doctrines such as the nature of God, the mystical cosmogony of the universe, the destiny of the universe, the creation of man, the immutability of God, the moral government of the universe, the doctrine of good and evil, the nature of the soul, angels and demons, the transcendental symbolism of numbers and letters, the balancing of complementary forces, etc., etc. All these many problems are divided under two main headings, the theoretical and practical Qabbalah, the first being again divided into the symbolical, dogmatic, and speculative branches. The first main division, that is, the theoretical, is philosophical. The second is magical and is largely elaborated around the Maseh Merkabah, the chariot of Ezekiel, and the four animals, which are also mentioned in the Apocalypse. Out of this magical Qabbalah, much of the magic of the Middle Ages was developed. The speculative or metaphysical Qabbalah is the more important branch. It forms, as Adolf Frank says, the heart and life of Judaism. It covers the evolution, involution, and devolution of the universe in every conceivable spiritual, moral, and intellectual form, and under such symbolism as the spirit clothes itself to come down and unclothes itself to go up, and again in Ecclesiastes, who knoweth the spirit of man that goeth upward, and the spirit of the beast that goeth downward to the earth. All these doctrines are wrapped up in the most complete secrecy. They form, in fact, the ancient Sod, or mystery of the Hebrews. Woe to the man who sees in the Torah, i.e., law, only simple recitals and ordinary words. Because if in truth it only contained these, we would even today be able to compose a Torah much more worthy of admiration. The recitals of the Torah are the vestments of the Torah. Woe to him who takes this garment for the Torah itself. There are some foolish people who, seeing a man covered with a beautiful garment, carry their regard no further, and take the garment for the body, whilst there exists a still more precious thing, which is the soul. The wise, the servitors of the Supreme King, those who inhabit the heights of Sinai, are occupied only with the soul, which is the basis of all the rest, which is the Torah itself, and in the future time they will be prepared to contemplate the soul of that soul, i.e. the deity, which breathes in the Torah. This idea is again set forth in the Zohar in the following allegory. Like unto a beautiful woman hidden in the interior of a palace who, when her friend and beloved passes by, opens for a moment a secret window, and is only seen by him, then again retires and disappears for a long time. So the doctrine shows herself only to the elect, but also not even to these always in the same manner. In the beginning, deeply veiled, she only beckons to the one passing with her hand. It simply depends on himself if in his understanding he perceives this gentle hint. Later she approaches him somewhat nearer and whispers to him a few words, but her countenance is still hidden in the thick veil, which his glances cannot penetrate. Still later she converses with him, her countenance covered with a thinner veil. After he has accustomed himself to her society, she finally shows herself him face to face and entrusts him with the innermost secrets of her heart. Sod. It is, according to the book of Proverbs, the glory of God to conceal a thing. Gloria Dei es celare verbum. With the lowly is wisdom. That is, wisdom belongs to those who have conquered the arrogance of the rational faculty. Moses is looked upon as such a one. He kept the secret law secretly and orally transmitted it to the elect. Also, he compiled the public or exoteric law for the multitudes. These two categories of laws are distinct, but frequently the second envelops the first, and as pointed out in the introduction, the uncovering of mysteries before the uninitiated is wrought with infernal dangers. For to do so wantonly is to blaspheme against the mystery of God. As Eliphaz Levi writes, "Woe to those who lay bare the secret of divine generation to the impure gaze of the crowd. Keep the sanctuary shut, all ye who would spare your sleeping father the mockery of the imitators of Ham. The veil of Isis is not lifted with impunity, and curiosity blasphemes faith when divine things are concerned. Blessed are those who have not seen and have believed," says the great master. The origins of the Qabbalah. The origins of the Qabbalah are primeval. They are lost in the mist of legend, magic, and folklore. They have grown through a process of mystical integration until they have absorbed all the great myths of the world. The Qabbalah is consequently a universal philosophy, combining the eternal masculine and eternal feminine, and cementing them into the eternally human. So it happens that wherever we search, we find origins. Thus, in Essenism, we find Kabbalism. The Essenes were not to divulge the secret doctrines to anyone, carefully to preserve the books belonging to their sect and the names of the angels or the mysteries connected with the Tetragrammaton and the other names of God and the angels, comprised in the Theosophy, as well with the cosmogony, which also played so important a part among the Jewish mystics and the Kabbalists. But long before the Essenes existed, lived the Kabbalah. Aryan and Chaldean esoteric doctrines percolated into it. In Egypt, the mysteries of the sun god, the moon goddess of Osiris and Isis impinged upon it. Assyria and Babylon gave it much, and not a little may be traced to the Vedas, the Upanishads, the Bhagavad Gita, and the Vedantas, and much of the practical Kabbalah, to the Tantras more especially. Historically, the main point of interest is that the Kabbalist is an inveterate plagiarist. He never hesitates to absorb knowledge from outside. His doctrines, being secret, are vastly attractive. They suck in all mysteries and digest them into a universal form. Consequently, there is both grist and chaff in the Kabbalah, a medley of wisdom and nonsense which often defies separation. The outstanding advantage of this plagiarizing is that it offers something for everyone. Consequently, the Kabbalah has developed into a world-embracing philosophy well adapted to the ideals of a world-scattered race. In it will be found Hinduism, Taoism, Buddhism, Zoroastrianism, Christianity, theism, deism, dualism, agnosticism, pantheism, Satanism, spiritualism, and atheism. For every cult, except polytheism, has burnt offerings on the altar of the Qabalistic mystery, magically depicted in the form of the pan-like Baphomet. It is this extraordinary universality with it's important to remember, for it has been the binding force which has kept Judaism intact. It has waterproofed it against solvent influences. Further still, the Kabbalah does offer to humanity a world religion or cult. In a silent and secret way, its doctrine is the conquering mystery of the life force. The philosophy of the Kabbalah. The philosophy of the Kabbalah is not difficult to define. It is a question of balance, of poise, and of equilibrium. But to explain what is meant by balance or poise is not so easy, and in place of attempting to do so in a few sentences, we will let this essential principle evolve slowly on its own in this and the next 4 chapters. Esoterically, the object of this philosophy is a return of the universe into the structure of the first atom. This mystery we will attempt to explain later on. Exoterically, it is the return of Israel to the Garden of Eden, the megalomania of all conquering Jew. The relationship between these two objects is that the second constitutes the protective shell of the first. The second maintains the Jewish peoples intact, and this intactness enables Kabbalistic wisdom to evolve. Outside this protective duty, the second has no relationship to the first, no more than the shell of an egg. Lifeless substance has a relationship to the yolk within it, living substance. That the Israelites will find the promised land in the conquest of the world is a lie which protects a sublime truth, the reabsorption of the world into the pure Spirit of God. To the masses of the Jewish people, such a statement will be considered blasphemous. Yet in the Zohar we read, quote, "With his ordinary understanding, man cannot understand the revelation of mysteries. All that I am about to reveal to you can be revealed only to the masters, who know how to keep the balance because they have been initiated." End quote. The shell, the white, and the yolk from the perfect egg. The shell protects the white and the yolk feeds upon the white. And when the white has vanished, the yolk, in the form of the fledged bird, breaks through the shell and presently soars into the air. Thus does the static become the dynamic, the material, the spiritual. If the shell is the exoteric principle and the yolk the esoteric, what then is the white? The white is the food of the second, the accumulated wisdom of the world centering round the mystery of growth, which each single individual must absorb before he can break the shell. The transmutation of the white by the yolk into the fledgling is the secret of secrets of the entire Kabbalistic philosophy. Know that all the upper and lower worlds are comprised in the image of God. We read in the Zohar. We have 1. A unity, the image of God. 2. A duality, the upper and lower worlds. 3. A trinity, the upper and lower worlds and the image of God. And 4. A quadruplicity, the knower, and the image of God, because this image includes the upper and lower worlds. The absorption of the knower in the image is the great work, the reestablishment of unity or equilibrium. Concerning the first of these two dualities, Isaac Meyer writes, quote, "The basic element of the most of the ancient and, to this day, of many of the modern religions of the world is the idea of a perfect invisible universe above, which is the real and true paradigm or ideal model of the visible universe below, the latter being the reflection a simulacrum or shadow of the invisible perfect ideal above. This idea was fully understood by the ancient Egyptians, as was shown in their deities Nut or Neith, the upper world, Shu or Ma, the intermediary, and Seb, the earth. In India, the same idea is fully set forth in the esoteric books of the Vedas, called the Upanishads. It is the supreme ideal Brahm, which is the only true. It manifests itself first in Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, past, present, and future time, and through these in the visible, the last being Maya or illusion. The temples of most of the archaic peoples of Asia and of Egypt were intended to be visible copies of the heavenly temple, the starry firmament called templum, and the same idea is visible in those of the Hebrews. Philo and Josephus represent the temples of the Israelites as typical of the visible universe, and this was based on the invisible universe. Amongst the Mohammedans, we find the same idea. The first thing God created was a pen. Indeed, the whole creation is but a transcript, and God, when He made the world, did but write it out of that copy which He had of it in His divine understanding from all eternity. The lesser world, microcosmos, or men, are but transcripts of the greater, the macrocosmos, as children and books are the copies of themselves. God takes upon Himself spiritual form in the act of creation, which is pure light transfigured into visible light, which is the relationship between the eyes and pure light. Pure spirit can only be sensed as a relation which we call spirituality, the relationship between the third eye and pure spirit. God to this third eye is not nothing. He is all things, for when this eye is open, He can be seen everywhere. The idea ex nihilo, nihil fil, from nothing, nothing is made, is abhorrent to the Kabbalah. Not anything, says the Zohar, is lost in the universe, not even the vapor which goes out of our mouths. As all things, it has its place and its destination, and the Holy One, blessed be it, makes it concur to its works. Not anything falls into the void, not even the words and the voice of man, but all has its place and its destination. The Kabbalist Abraham ben Dior writes, "Then they, the Kabbalists, affirm that all things have been drawn from no thing, not nothing. They do not wish to speak of nothing properly to say, for never can being come from non-being, but they understand by non-being that which one can conceive of, neither by its cause or its essence. It, the no thing, is, in a word, the cause of causes. It is it whom we call the primordial non-being, because it is anterior to the entire universe." Though the Kabbalah recognizes but one primordial cause, it also recognizes two complementary elements, the one incorruptible and vital, which reveals itself as a spiritual energy, and the other corruptible and inert, always tending to dissolve and return to its original atoms. The first is bliss, the second is hate. The first is symbolized by the angelic host, the second by the demon hordes, good and evil. For as Isaiah says, "I form the light and create darkness. I make peace and create evil. I, the Lord, do all these things." The spirit which we sense through our third eye is not God as the primordial cause or no thing, but as it were the thought of this cause. He constituted in the first place a point of light, which became the divine thought. Our consciousness is the mirror which catches the rays of this thought. Therefore all thoughts are images of God's thought. And the more spiritual, alive, our consciousness becomes, the more perfect are these images, which are not illusions, but symbols of reality. Simon ben Yohai stretched out his hands and cried, "Now ponder well upon all that I have this day revealed unto you." and know that none of these celestial palaces are light, nor are they spirits, nor are they souls, nor are they any form that may be seized hold of by any of the senses. Now ponder well upon all that I have this day revealed unto you, and know that none of these celestial palaces are light, nor are they spirits, nor are they souls, nor are they any form that may be seized hold of by any of the senses. Know that the palaces are thoughts seen through curtains. Take away the thought, and the palace becomes nothing that the mind can grasp, nor the imagination picture. And now, finally, that all the mysteries of the faith lie in this doctrine, that all that exists in the upper world is the light of thought, the infinite. Lift the curtain, and all matter appears immaterial. Lift another curtain, and the immaterial becomes even more spiritual and sublime. As each succeeding curtain is lifted, we are transported to ever higher planes of sublimity until the highest is reached. The curtains are the divisions, abysses between the superconscious thought of God and the conscious thought of man. The ultimate curtain is the shell of the egg, materiality. But before this final curtain can be lifted, a host of intellectual curtains, the white of the egg, have to be dissolved by transmutation into spiritual energy. Spiritual deliverance or attainment is consequently an act of creation. Finally, we come to this conclusion. It is not God or the universe which is the supreme mystery, but man himself, the link between God and the universe. The Zohar says, as soon as man appeared, all was achieved, both in the upper and in the lower worlds, for all is contained in man. He combines within himself all the forms. Again, the Zohar says, the essence of the supreme wisdom is composed of earth and of heaven, of divine and of human, of material and of immaterial. Even as man is composed of body and soul, man is the synthesis of all the holy names. In man are enclosed all the worlds, both the upper and the lower. Man includes all the mysteries, even those that existed before the creation of the world. Since the form of man comprises all that is in the heavens above and on the earth beneath, God has chosen it as his own form. Naught could exist before the formation of the human form, which encloses all things, and all that exists is by the grace of the existence of the human form. But we must distinguish between the upper man and the lower man, since one cannot exist without the other. On the form of man depends the perfection of faith. That which we call heavenly man, or the first divine manifestation, is the absolute form of all that is, the source of all forms and ideas, supreme thought. Man is the central point around which all creation revolves. He is the noblest figure of all those that are harnessed to the chariot of God. In nature, man is the center and the world is the periphery of what the Zohar calls the garment of God. And the removal of this garment mysteriously does not disclose what lies behind it, but what lies within ourselves. It is not that we are absorbed by God, but that God is absorbed by us. The ocean of quicksilver merging into the minutest globule of this same metal. This unclothing is accomplished through the equilibrium not of opposite, but of complementary forces. Evil is not the opposite of good, but the negative side of a positive negative existence called life. When the positive equals or balances the negative, the result is equilibrium. Perfect equilibrium is zero. That is nothing. Bliss. Equilibrium. Equilibrium is the fundamental law or mystery of the Kabbalah. In fact, the bulk of the Qabalistic doctrines are but a commentary upon it. There is the upper and the lower, the real and the apparent, the invisible and the visible. In the Zohar we read, all that which is found or exists upon the earth has its spiritual counterpart also to be found on high, and there does not exist the smallest thing in the world which is not itself attached to something on high and is not found in dependence upon it. When the inferior part is influenced, and that which is set over it in the superior world is equally influenced, all are perfectly united together. Again and again is this idea repeated in different words, and from it is derived the Talmudic maxim, if thou wilt know the invisible, have an open eye for the visible, which means that this world is the true Bible which can lead us back to God or reality. For all which is contained in the lower world is also found in the upper in prototype. The lower and upper reciprocally act upon each other. Or, as is written in the Sefer Sephiroth, all that which is on the earth is also found above, in perfect prototype, and there is not anything so insignificant in the world that does not depend upon another above, in such a manner that if the lower moves itself, the higher corresponding to it moves towards it. As to the number, therefore, of the different species of creatures which are enumerated below, the same number is to be found in the upper roots. The doctrine of interdependence runs through the New Testament. Christ says, "Take heed that ye despise not one of these little ones. For I say unto you, that in heaven their angels do always behold the face of my Father which is in heaven." Also, are not 2 sparrows sold for a farthing? And one of them shall not fall on the ground without your Father. Who, me? And what, Ma? Are the 2 extremes of this doctrine representing, as they do, the above and the below. In who created these is to be found the origin of the word Elohim, that is, God, gods, for in Hebrew these is Ele, H-L-A, and by adding me, M-E-E-Y-M, we obtain Elohim, Milah, the me being reversed on account of its reflection. And upon this secret the world is built. This same idea of equilibrium between who and what, upper and lower, is also found in the Hermetic doctrines, which drew largely on Qabalistic knowledge. All is expressed in one proposition. That which is above is like that which is below, and that which is below is like that which is above, for the fulfillment of the wonders of the one thing. According to Eliphas Levi, this universal principle is the telesma of the world. To symbolize this supreme truth, Hermes, so legend affirms, duplicated the serpent on his caduceus and so set it against itself in eternal equilibrium. In the invisible world, man is the center, just as God is the center of the invisible world. God created man in his own image. Adam was made of the same earth out of which was raised the sanctuary of the earth, and the earth on which was the sanctuary was the synthesis of the 4 cardinal points of the world. These cardinal points were united at the moment of creation with the 4 elements: fire, water, air, and earth. These elements being Thod, He, Vav, and He, of the name Jehovah. Man is, consequently, the synthesis of all the holy names. Therefore in man are enclosed all the worlds, both the upper and the lower. And since the form of man comprises all that is in the heavens above and on the earth beneath, God has chosen it as his own form. Naught could exist before the formation of the human form, which encloses all things, and all that exists is by the grace of the existence of the human form. As man is a duality in unity, so also is the Garden of Eden. There is the heavenly Eden to which there is no human approach, and the earthly Eden which is approached by 32 paths, the 22 letters and 10 numerals. No one knows the earthly Eden but the little face, the 7 lower Sephiroth, and no one knows the heavenly Eden but the greater face, the 3 supernal Sephiroth. Should the upper key, Kether, cease looking into the lower eye, Malkuth, the world would perish. Thus does this unvarying idea of balance run on. The union of man with God, says Saint Teresa, is nothing but the reunion of two bodies which have been separated but are always one. The connecting link is the power of will, which is neither good nor evil, but a power or energy which can be filtered through good or evil. It is, as it were, the beam of light of a magic lantern, the slides it penetrates being the nature of man. As long as these slides exist, there can be no perfect vision of God and, consequently, no perfect union. When Moses said to God, "I beseech thee, show me thy glory," the answer he received was, quote, "Thou canst not see my face, for there shall no man see me and live. And the Lord said, Behold, there is a place by me, and thou shalt stand upon a rock. And it shall come to pass, while my glory passeth by, that I will put thee in a cleft of the rock, and will cover thee with my hand while I pass by. And I will take away mine hand, and thou shalt see my back parts, but my face shall not be seen." Which means that man, if he wills, can see God's lower manifestation, his visible universe, but that his invisible nature is cut off from him whilst in the flesh. Since this fundamental law of equilibrium was first grasped, and it sinks back long before Kabbalistic days, nothing has been added to the essential knowledge of man, and the philosophy of the classical age, the magic of the medieval, and the science of the modern ages are founded upon it and have, in attempting to explain it, merely replaced one set of symbols by another. The Zohar says, "The Holy One, blessed be He, found it necessary to create all these things in the world to ensure its permanence, so that there should be, as it were, a brain with many membranes encircling it. The whole world is constructed on this principle, upper and lower, from the first mystic point up to the furthest removed of all the stages. They are all coverings one to another, brain within brain and spirit within spirit, so that one is a shell to another. The primal point is the innermost light of a translucency, tenuity, and purity passing comprehension." Philosophical comparisons. Before concluding this chapter, it may be of some interest to the reader if a few brief comparisons are made between the Kabbalistic doctrines and other philosophies, because this will accentuate its universality. For the Kabbalah is a world philosophy, and consequently there lurks within it the makings of a world religion. That it should show remarkable resemblance to Zoroastrianism is to be expected, for both flourished in adjacent regions. As the Kabbalah is largely an exposition of the upper and lower, God and the image of God, so is Zoroastrian philosophy founded on the idea of the passive and active in nature, the so-called good and the evil. And so the Kabbalistic, the mediating agent, is the will. So to the Zoroastrian, the great magical agent is in actual fact no other than Lucifer, the vehicle of light. To Pythagoras, God was absolute truth clothed in light. All things emerged from the tetrad, and the mediator was number manifested by form. To him, material forms were but images or illusions of real forms, and this was the view also taken by Aristotle and Plato. To the second of these philosophers, God, intending to make a visible world, first formed an intelligible one, that so having an incorporeal and most godlike pattern before him, he might make the corporeal world agreeable to it. Xenophon says, "The supreme God holds himself invisible, and it is only in his works that we are capable of admiring him." And Cicero says, "Though you see not the deity, yet by the contemplation of his works, you are led to acknowledge a God," which is similar to St. Paul when, speaking of Christ, he said, "For the invisible things of him from the creation of the world are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even his eternal power and Godhead." And again, "For in him we live and move and have our being, as certain also of your own poets have said, for we are also his offspring." But of all philosophies, the closest allied are those of the Vedanta and of Lao Tse. The Indian system is a trinity in unity, the ineffable, incomprehensible Brahm, becoming apparent in the Trimurti, Tri, three, and Murti, bodies, Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, creation, preservation, and destruction. The Atman is reality, and the apparent world is Maya, or illusion. Man within him possesses an Atman, or soul, which can only attain to reality through absorption of the Atman, or oversoul. This absorption is effected through meditation. Taoism is, in idea, even more closely related. Tao produced one, one produced two, two produced three, and three produced all things. What then is Tao? There was a time when heaven and earth did not exist, but only an unlimited space in which reigned absolute immobility. All the visible things and all that which possesses existence were born in that space from a powerful principle which existed by itself, and from itself developed itself, and which made the heavens revolve and preserve the universal life. A principle as to which philosophy declares we know not the name, and which for that reason it designates by the simple appellation Tao. Tao manifested itself in heaven and earth, with which it is, so to say, one. Another writer says, by the Chinese, man is considered as a microcosm. The universe is man on a large scale. Human reason is the reason of the universe. The holy man, or sage by eminence, is like the great pinnacle and spirit. He is the first of all beings. His spirit is one with the heavens, the masterwork of the supreme reason, being perfectly unique. These resemblances and scores of others could be cited are not fortuitous, neither is it possible that they should have originated from one source, one human philosophical doctrine. The truth is that they are spontaneous. They spring naturally from reason itself once thought is turned upon the world. They are an integral part of man's mind and being. Destroy them, and we're plunged into madness. Fertilize them, and step by step we are raised towards God. Religion, that is the equilibrium between the visible and the invisible, the lower and the upper, is essentially a part of man's nature. When this equilibrium is lost, society, however progressive it may seem materially, is plunged back into chaos, from which cosmos and order can only emerge by an illumination, a balancing of forces which will give life and light to a new world order. Man is the microcosm because he cannot truly and meaningly say I am without postulating the macrocosm. The one is as much of his nature as the other because his existence depends on the balance between both, as certainly as an electrical current depends on what we call positive and negative waves of electricity or of light. Let there be light occultly represents the world, not only as a material form, but as a spiritual idea. End of chapter. Let me know you are here. Hit that like button on your way out, and also if you like what you hear, subscribe to the channel and share this with your friends. Meet me at the next video as we continue with the book, The Secret Wisdom of the Qabalah, and look into the cosmogony of the Qabalah, as well as the problem of good and evil.